Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the opening of our exhibition, Ceaseless Motion, William Harvey's Experiments in Circulation. It's very kind of you to come tonight. My name is Simon Bowman. I'm actually the Harveyan librarian here, and it's a role that dates back actually to William Harvey's donation of his library and collections to the college, which allowed the creation of his museum and library. Tonight is actually not just a celebration of William Harvey, it also marks our 500th anniversary of the college, and this exhibition in a way is a very special one to mark that occasion. The college, as you know, was founded in 1518 by Henry VIII, and it's not that many organisations that can claim such a long history. And we've got a year-long programme of events. If you go onto our website, you'll see there's a number of public lectures to celebrate it as well. So before I invite my colleague to introduce our speaker tonight, Dr. Andrew Cunningham, I do have a few thanks to make. Please also be aware that tonight's lecture is being filmed, so you may see yourselves, I don't know, on YouTube or something after tonight. Just be aware of that. So we are particularly grateful to the National Portrait Gallery, the Royal College of Surgeons, the Science Museum, the British Cardiovascular Society, Worcester College, Oxford, the Wellcome Collection and the Simons Collection for donating, or lending, sorry I should say, be precise, lending items for this wonderful exhibition. And I hope you've all had a chance to go round and have a look at it. There's also a number of key contributors I need to thank: Professor Ludmilla Jordanova, Professor Dame Kay Davies, artist Angela Palmer, Jean Simons, and indeed many other colleagues within the college and outside of the college who've been extremely supportive, contributory to this exhibition. And I particularly, of course, like to thank Professor Jane Dacre, the President of the Royal College, and the senior leadership team for all their support of the general activities of the library, archive and museum team, and indeed to thank the amazing work of that team, both in creating this exhibition and in many other activities and hard work that they do. So I'd now like to call on Matthew Wood, Exhibitions Officer, to tell us a little bit more about the exhibition and to introduce Dr. Andrew Cunningham. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Now, I will be quick because Andrew's looking at his watch, and that's the real reason we're all here. I just wanted to say, as the exhibitions officer, that after Andrew's spoken, you will be able to go into the exhibition and have a great look around. The one thing I want to tell you before you go in, it seems like an odd thing to say when you're going into an exhibition about medical history, is to forget what you know. Put yourself back in the mindset of someone in 1628. We all know circulation is real. We know that is the truth. But try and imagine a world where that is not the truth, where that is an absolutely earth-shaking idea that William Harvey is presenting to you. That's all I want to say. Bear that in mind when you see the exhibition. Now, a man who needs no introduction, we could say, is Dr. Andrew Cunningham, who's going to tell us more about the man, William Harvey. Thank you, Dr. Cunningham.
Thank you. Thank you very much. William Harvey, the Royal College of Physicians, have been part of my life for the whole time I've been a professional historian. This, as you see, is William Harvey, the portrait, the most authentic one we have, which is in the exhibition. Well done in getting that. And this is what I'm going to talk about, I think. Excuse me, I've never seen my own words come up the top of the screen before. So that bit too. How do we move on here? I'm pressing green, is that good? Oh, wait, okay. So, how William Harvey discovered the circulation of the blood and why he regretted it. Now, 2018, as we are continuing to hear, is, what shall I point it at? That, okay. 500th anniversary of the founding of this college. Obviously, not on this site. 500 years is a long time for an institution to survive. But also, I discovered, I should have known this a long time ago, while preparing this talk, it's possibly the 400th anniversary of William Harvey actually discovering the circulation of the blood. Because in this book he says, that's the book there, also in the exhibition, it was being published after being confirmed by ocular demonstration for 9 years and more by the president and fellows of the college. Now, my maths, I'm a historian, 1628 minus 9 years equals 1619, 9 years or more, 1618, right? Or maybe we missed it, maybe it was last year. Now, I want to offer some praise to William Harvey, and he is a most extraordinary and accomplished person. The discovery of the circulation of the blood remains to this day the greatest of the discoveries of physiology. Its whole honour belongs to Harvey. It's made by one man. And that's a former president of the college here, so you'd expect him to say that. So here's some more praise, though. The most important discovery ever made in anatomy, and with enormous consequences for physiology and pathology. And that's me. Well, we're not alone, the president and myself there. Now, I was going to start by asking, is there anyone here who does not believe in the circulation of the blood in humans and in animals? I was going to ask that, but there's always someone. Is there anyone who? Well, that's good. Okay, as Matthew said just now, you have to change your mindset. The discovery of the circulation of the blood was not expected by anyone. No one was seeking it, despite what you may read in old histories. It was not a cumulative business of everyone trying to put together the necessary pieces to come up with the answer. It wasn't a race of any kind. And when it was discovered, it was absolutely not welcome. And the person most shocked by it was the man who discovered it. Now, a tale of two cities and three English modernizers. I'm not there, am I? Founder modernizers. First founder, Thomas Moonacre, who is the man who gets the charter from the king, founds the college in 1518. Now you see he went to Padua where he got his MD and comes back to London, founds the college here. And in the charter it says he wants the institution to control the practice of medicine against quacks and apothecaries like in Italy. Right. Second founder, John Keys, as how that is pronounced, Padua MD, 1541. And when he comes back and becomes president here, he gets a grant of bodies, 6 bodies, annually of criminals to dissect after their death for the edification and education of the physicians. And that's like he saw them doing in Padua. We have to remember here, London is not an intellectual centre in this period. Not at all. It's shortly going to be, but not yet. Now, I'm going to suggest we can look at Harvey as a third founder here, and I don't need to say where he gets his MD. Padua, 1602. And when he comes back, he wants the fellows to undertake anatomical research in London, in the London College, like in Italy, especially in Padua. So he got 3 Englishmen going over quite a long period to Padua, the great centre of medical education, most innovative in the whole of Europe, which means effectively in the whole of the world. And they bring something back to improve the conditions back here. Now, Harvey is very much a college man. It's not just a matter of he was a fellow of the college and he discovered the circulation of the blood. This was a place he was very keen on defending practice. He speaks of his most loving colleagues. Now, how many of us can do that? And he recruited them to test his strange and unexpected discovery. He was a regular attender at meetings, though he declined the office of president. In fact, I think he liked it so much, we can call this his second home. His home life left a lot to be desired, so he came here. And as we can see, he left money in his will for a feast. Now, the point of feasts in institutions like this, in those days, and probably still now, was to stop the fellows arguing and fighting amongst each other. Come and be convivial. Because all the doctors were self-employed, they were all on looking for patients, promoting new theories. What Harvey wants is them to come together and be members, fellows of one institution. So that's the annual feast, still carried on, and it also calls for an exhortation to the members of the college to search and study out the secrets of nature by way of experiment. And as we've heard, he donated a new building, a whole library, puts his own library in there, creates a museum of up-to-date medical interest. Unfortunately, all that got burnt in the Great Fire of London. However, just after Harvey died, this man over here in this portrait is Sir Hans Sloane. And Sir Hans Sloane was a great jackdaw of medical men's writings. And as soon as they died, he zoomed in, probably paid for all the manuscripts. So we've got quite a lot of manuscripts by Harvey, which are now in the British Library, which were not consumed in the Great Fire. Thank you, Sir Hans. Now, it may be the case that by the time of Harvey's death, you could represent the College of Physicians as being that kind of research institute that Harvey had wanted to modify it as. Because there is someone writing in 1657 calling the College of Physicians Solomon's house. Now, you know Solomon from the Bible, the greatest, wisest man who ever lived. And Francis Bacon, earlier in the 17th century, exhorting people to research into the secrets of nature. And he invents this mythical college, Solomon's House, in which there are a lot of people, nice hierarchically done, investigating nature and searching into those secrets. And as you see, the claim could be made that some of the physicians in the college employ themselves in dissecting animals of all kinds, as well living as dead. And there are those who daily investigate arguments to promote the circulation. Now, as Matthew hinted just now, forget everything you know. What does everyone think about blood movement before Harvey? And the answer is they think blood moves, and this is everybody, not just anatomists, not just physicians, everybody, the equivalent of you and me in the 17th century. And to get there, I need to take you on a whistle-stop tour of the history of anatomizing. 1 minute, I promise. The earliest person we know anatomizing, cutting up dead animals, cutting up live animals to see how they work, was Aristotle. Yes, the Aristotle, pupil of Plato. Very, very busy man with first-hand experience of the dissection of animals, writes several books about it. Those books survive. In fact, they're over there on that shelf. And then we have, it's a Greek study, anatomy. No other culture has ever done this systematically. 500 years of other Greek physicians and philosophers dissecting, vivisecting, arguing, learning more about the functioning primarily of the human body. But, as you see, all their writings disappeared. Now, if you're a historian of medicine, as I was, you say, well, thank goodness for that. But finally, in antiquity comes Galen. End of the 2nd century AD, he dies, he's a Greek, he's a physician, he works in Rome, and he cannot stop talking and writing. And what we have in his books, almost all of which survive, and there's a lot of books there, not just on anatomy, but on the whole of medicine and also philosophy. What you have in there is summation, or it was treated as a summation of everything the Greeks had learned over those 500 plus years before. So Galen, that's the name to remember, because all of Western educated, learned medicine, the sort that doctors did, was based on the works of Galen. Now, Galen is interested in the human body, but is not allowed to dissect humans in Rome. And I know if you think of the Colosseum, you think, really? You can kill them in public, but you're not allowed to dissect them because that somehow invades their privacy. Still, that's the case. Now, we're nearly finished this history of anatomizing, because then we come to the Renaissance, the rebirth, as you know what it means, of the works and achievements and accomplishments of the Greeks and the Romans. All their books were now found to be available and were consulted. And the thing that everyone involved in this does, and of course you can imagine they're in Italy almost exclusively, is seek to master what the ancients knew and then emulate it. And all that work, there's quite a bit of it in anatomy, culminates in Andreas Vesalius. And he writes this book. He works in Padua. He's in his 20s, early 20s, when all this happens. And by the time he is 28, 29, he can publish what we all know as the Fabrica, 7 books on the fabric of the human body in the exhibition here, 1543. And he's not shy. Here he is, self-portrait, as you open the book. This is a glorious coloured volume. And here, this is the title that was in the middle of that title page just now. And I know your Latin is good enough, but I'll spell it out. 7 books on the fabric of the human body. And we're in the age of printing. Galen himself did not draw any images in anatomy because he knew that as they're copied out by hand, so they get corrupted, so they decline in quality. So he didn't even start doing that. But now we're in the age of printing, and you can make a wood block, and that, as it were, freezes the image, and you can repeat it without it becoming inferior. And this is what Vesalius does. He takes all the knowledge he can get from Galen and subsequent anatomists and pictures it in the most glorious, glorious, fantastic pictures, which I'm sure you're familiar with. For instance, there's this one. You remember the muscle men? Where he portrays these men, possibly around Padua, criminals, with their layers of muscles successively removed. And if you went to medical school, I'm sure you would have seen those images there. But before Vesalius did that, I'll get it back to Harvey, when he's 23, 24, he comes to Fleming, he comes via Paris, he comes to Padua. He starts dissecting there, and he does what's called the 6 tables. They're just single sheets, big, and they absolutely summarize everything he knows at age 23, 24. And after the success of these, amongst the students and teachers, he then decides to do the whole book, the whole fabula. Okay, this is the first of them. And as you can see, this is the liver. And here is the wall of the intestine. And digested food is conveyed through here, what they used to call the portal vein, into the liver, and the liver makes blood. That's how you stay alive in terms of eating. That's the first table. Here's the second table. And this is a table of the veins of the human body. And there's the liver. Here are all the veins. Can you see what's missing? The heart. It would be there if Vesalius thought it was relevant. Or Galen thought it was relevant, but they don't. So, here, though, are the arteries. And you can see the great arteries are far fewer, and there is the heart. And later on, this is in the Fabrica, Vesalius does deal with the heart, but always the heart with the lungs. So you can see heart here, lungs around, trachea here. It's always an organ of respiration. So you keep alive in 2 ways. One is by eating food, and the other is drawing in whatever it is from the air, spirit, shall we call it, which keeps you alive, because you know if you stop breathing, you die. If you stop eating, you die. So that's 2 systems. Now, come back to William Harvey. How did William Harvey discover the circulation of the blood? Now, I'm sorry to have lured you here under false pretenses, but we don't know. What we have is the book, De Motu Cordis, on the motion of the heart and blood in animals. It's not a laboratory notebook. It's an argument. It's an argument to show people who've never thought this, don't believe this, that Harvey has made a discovery he doesn't like and he doesn't want. It's an argument to take you through that. And although we have his lectures, and there are some notes over the notes he gave his lectures from, it's hard to date any of the changes in there. Now, here is part of the answer. There's 2 parts I'm going to give. This is the first part. How does Harvey, dissecting away when he comes back to London, passionately, without cease, how does he get a problem to investigate. And I think you know the answer to this. Harvey goes to Padua. And it's in Padua he gets what we historians used to call his problematic, the problem he's going to investigate. Now, Padua, always at the forefront of universities in Europe. It's run by the Senate of Venice, always at the forefront. They're always trying to attract students in, always up to date. It's got more facilities than it had when John Keyes was there. Here's one of them, the Physic Garden, Botanic Garden. Beautiful place, founded in 1545, still the earliest, despite what Pisa thinks. And as you can see, it's still there today, and you can go and visit it. And it has also this most fantastic thing nowhere else has, but everywhere else tries to copy, the world's first permanent anatomy theatre, finished in 1594. That's to say, a building enabling many people to see a dissection at once, most efficiently and permanent there, not taken down and put up from year to year. Now, when Harvey arrives there, in the 1598, I think it is, the university building is all new as well. And if we take the frontis off this is the bow, the ox, which is still there, you can see here a cross-section. This is in the exhibition too. And you see up here is the anatomy theatre. It's built in. No one else has got this. And inside the anatomy theatre, where do we go? It's still in use in the mid-19th century. Now, I've counted those people once, and I think you get something over 200 people in there with no air conditioning. And as you can see, the corpse is down there at the bottom. And that's still there, because this is a very, very excited young historian in there a few years ago. And the photograph was taken by a woman who's now my wife, and she's very good at focusing. It's just, I was out of focus all day. I was so excited. And teaching in there, when Harvey arrives, near the end of his career, is this man, Fabricius. And you can see there's the Italian name there. And as he retired, he started publishing works which were supposed to accumulate into this theatre of the whole animal fabric. Started publishing in 1603. Now, since John Keyes was there, and this is to make them the most innovative and forward-thinking of all universities, in the philosophy faculty there, they have gone back to Aristotle. Proper Aristotle, not Aristotle as messed around with by the medievals. Real Aristotle. How can they learn, they ask each other, to philosophize like Aristotle, Aristotelically? And these may not be famous to you, Zabarella, Cremonini, but they were really famous in the 16th century. The work of Aristotle, most important for all of them, is this work on the soul. It's not a religious work. It's about whatever it is that makes us who we are and controls and regulates our behavior. So the philosophers are doing that, and so is the great anatomist. Star anatomist, he really, really is. He goes back to Aristotle as well. So, you remember that little history of anatomy I gave you? Galen is this major authority. Galen is whom Vesalius copies or emulates. We're going back 500 years to the very beginning of anatomizing of animals as done by Aristotle. So when Harvey gets to Padua, the anatomizing is also new compared to anything people know here in London. I shall say this about Fabricius, is an aside I can take out of the time I lost just now. He gets old. It is the foremost medical university. Boys come from all over Europe. And in the university, they form into nations. So there is the German nation. And of course, I need say no more, they keep a book of their experiences and what they thought. And that book still exists. And what happens is every year, they come from the far reaches of North Europe. They come to this great anatomist, and they find Fabricius does not teach them what they came for. And they complain to the university authorities, who are 3 senators from Venice. And you know that students come and students go, but staff stay on. And the three reformatori, they're called, who run the university, they acknowledge to the students, yes, yes, you're right, and we will do something about it. And as soon as those students are gone, they give Fabricius a pay rise. Because they know he is doing the most innovative anatomy in the world, but it's not something that students in general could understand or appreciate. Anyway, Fabricius starts publishing his book, The Theatre of the Whole Animal Fabric. There's the word I'm trying to draw attention to. And you can see, he takes a faculty of the body, and these are mostly humans, but not necessarily, but animal fabric. Vision. How is this accomplished by the eye in all different animals? Why are their eyes different? What is it that eyes need to have to be eyes? Why do they differ in different animals? And you can see that carries on the voice, on hearing, on the local motion of animals. How do they walk as a whole? And finally on the formation of the egg and chick. That's to say, the generation of animals from conception to birth. And this is the title page of one of those parts. As you can see it says, on vision, on voice, on hearing. And this is not the kind of anatomical topic anyone since Aristotle had taken up. And this is the, excuse me, one of the illustrations he gives on vision and its organ, the eye, and these are eyes of different creatures. It's not comparative anatomy. Absolutely not saying it's different in this and it's different in that. What he's looking at is what is the same in all these, and why do they differ in different animals. So we're with Harvey, and what we know is in that anatomical theatre, he probably went out of focus too, like I did. He sees the most exciting project for him to undertake, to join in. He's a boy from the sticks. England really still the sticks. And he sees this, and he comes back home, and he wants to continue with it. All those Aristotle-type investigations on, I need hardly spell it out, animals, the animal body. So he comes back, settles in London. If he comes back, does he come back? Oh, I pressed the wrong button, okay. Right, comes back 1602, settles in London, got to start his own practice. There's no NHS, there's no general work for physicians. You have to build your own practice. He's positioned to St. Bartholomews Hospital, 1 day a week, that's all you need. Royal position first to James and then to Charles I. And with respect to the college, he gives these annual lectures on anatomy for the college. And here, just because I have it, is St. Bartholomew's Hospital. There's an awful lot of green stuff here. That's the hospital, that bit there, in 1617. Now, I said I was a historian, and one of the things we always worry about is a person between two eras. Is he innovative? Is he looking back or whatever? And the question here is he Aristotelian or modern? Now, the discovery of the circulation of the blood is extraordinary. No one's got anything like that. And if you read the book, De Motu, there's hardly mention of Aristotle in there. Quite a lot of mentions of Galen. Is it therefore, my fellow historians have asked, can we count it as part of the great scientific revolution of the 17th century, in which England was so important, in which we took up maths and machines and gave up the qualitative approach to physics and astronomy of Aristotle? Is it part of that? Well, most of his modern biographers, Harvey's modern biographers, say, yes, this is the most amazing modern work. But no, says Cunningham. I should remind you who Cunningham is. It's me. Always slightly out of step. He says in De Motu Cordis, I'm persuaded to publish because this is a topic Fabricius has not reached yet. So here is an open topic. But Harvey also works on the topics that Fabricius has worked on, because it's not closed. We can always be making progress here. So this is his book as published, The Motion on the Heart and Blood in Animals. You'll be getting that point now, animals against humans. And in his, and that again is compared to Vesalius, but Harvey's other writings, the one he published at the end of his life, a bit unwillingly, exercises on the generation of animals. How do they generate? This is so Aristotelian, historians have had to have felt they had to apologise for it somehow. Maybe in his dotage, he went back to Aristotle, having been so modern in the first book on the motion of the heart and blood. And there's great methodological discussion there by Harvey on what is the right way to find things out. And in that book, he says, I follow Aristotle. I follow Aristotle as my general, Fabricius as my guide. And those are really the only previous authors on anatomy, on the generation of animals, and indeed on the heart, that Harvey treats as the real authorities on the right course. And his friend here says, Harvey thought Aristotle was absolutely amazing, which of course he was. So, like Fabricius, Harvey is an Aristotelian in his anatomical research. And what he wants then is, he studies all animals, the animal. When it comes to the heart, when he sets out to work, when he comes back 1602, 1603, he does most of this at home, in his wife's kitchen, very tolerant woman. And he wants an account of why the heart of particular animals is as it is, why hearts of animals differ, and this is Aristotelian, according to the life they lead, their activities, their habits, their other parts. This is the way we're going to understand these differences. He wants to understand the final cause for what purpose of everything. And then he discovers the circulation of the blood, and you can't get a final cause for that. Now, Harvey has got himself a new problematic. He's asking a new question, a question no one else has ever asked. And he looks in the works of Galen and other anatomists, and he finds that everything they've said about the heart and the blood and its movement, and they weren't answering Harvey's question at all. Everything they said is pretty self-contradictory. You can really make Galen look quite stupid by pointing out he says this in one book and the opposite in another book, which he probably wrote 30 years later. And what Harvey realizes is everyone has been looking only into humans. They look into animals to learn about humans, look only into man only, and into him being dead too. So Harvey is also practicing vivisection, and there's no objections to that vivisection anywhere in 17th century society. What we need to do, and if you just look at what is written in red, we need to look at this not only in man, but also in all other creatures that have a heart. You see how big this project is. It's not just I'll investigate the heart of man, which is difficult enough. I'll investigate hearts of all animals that I can find. So he dissects a lot of different creatures. This is a partial list he himself gives. Hens, geese, pigeons, ducks, fishes, shellfish. So it's basically anything that comes to hand. Cats and cattle, and he also, of course, I know I say of course, yes, but of course, when his wife's parrot dies, he dissects that as well. And he also dissects, not vivisects, man himself. Now, about 1618, let us hope it was then, there's a moment of realization. And this is a great long sentence, written in English or in Latin, and we historians have been arguing, struggling with this sentence, because something happens in it in which Harvey says, it was this which made me think maybe the blood might not have a circular motion, which afterwards I found true. So he's talking about the quantity of blood which passes through the heart, the speed with which it does it, the number of pulsations in a minute. And what he finds is those two systems, from Galen, Vesalius, and what everybody else thought, those two systems, the arteries and the veins, become one. The blood goes out in the arteries to the smallest arteries, passes through the flesh of the body, taken up by the smallest veins, comes back to the heart, and then goes round again, and round again. Circular motion, pumped out by the heart. And as I say here, this is heresy. It's the opposite of what everyone else thinks. And everyone else has been basing their medical practice on there being two systems. So, I now come to the second part of my answer. The first part, Harvey goes to Padua. The second part is folding door. Now, you've probably got folding doors on your patios at home. The thing about a folding door is you've got at least two leaves, and you can go out and go in. It sort of restricts access, but it doesn't stop it unless you close it completely. Now, the word valvae, it's a plural in Latin, means folding door. It doesn't mean valve as we would understand that. Harvey's responsible for it meaning limiting to one-way flow. And one of the things that Harvey establishes in his investigations is the competence of these little doors, these valves. That's giving a new meaning to this word. Do you remember this, when is a door not a door, when you were young? Well, that's when it was an old-fashioned valve. And Hezekiah Crook, writing in 1615, talks about valves which hinder the reflux of the colon. And when Harvey's looking at Galen, he finds that the valves in the heart let not only at one time things going that way, but things going this way, but at the same time, two different things, spirit, blood, can pass in and out of these old-fashioned doors. Now, Fabricius, his favourite discovery was the little doors in the veins, osteoli, which he calls, and you can see them especially in the human arm and leg, and this is in the exhibition as well. Now, what Harvey's discovering is the competence of these little things, little flaps. They only allow one-way flow. And one of the experiments he does is he takes a human arm, a dead one, and he tries to push a probe down the veins, and it won't go through. It gets stopped by these little things, what Fabricius discovered, because they only allow motion in the opposite direction. And they're very robust. And Robert Boyle, the young Robert Boyle, asked the old William Harvey, what was the moment, sir, when you came to this conclusion that the blood must circulate? And Harvey said, when I was investigating the valves in the veins. And this, which you'll see, is the only illustration in Harvey's book. Circulation of the blood, very hard thing to illustrate. And this is actually an illustration he took from Fabricius. When it went to Fabricius, it proved the opposite thing. You know, you can stop the blood between these nodules, and that proves, you don't have to dissect anyone, proves you can do it on your own arm if you've got enough hands. You see at the bottom there, you need 3. So the blood only goes one way. I'm nearly there. But because he makes this discovery, Harvey becomes, as you can understand, absolutely obsessed by this terrible thing he's discovered, that everything we knew about the movement of the blood for 2,000 plus years is wrong. And it's a scary thought. And as I was showing him, he's not a revolutionary, not remotely a revolutionary. He's not trying to make a splash. He's not trying to think of something which will impress people or make them angry or whatever. So he doesn't actually write a book in the tradition of Fabricius, though he does with The Generation of Animals. He just writes this one little book. It only takes a couple of hours to read. As I say, he's not a revolutionary, not remotely. He's a conservative in politics. He's physician to 2 kings. In the Civil War, he goes with the king to the battlefield. During the Commonwealth period, the Puritan period, he is in despair about the state of the world. But he dies before Charles II comes back. And he's conservative in medical politics. And the evidence for that is he's a fellow of the Royal College of Physicians. Not just because they're top dogs, but because they're under very severe attack, especially during the Commonwealth period, from other practitioners. Now, he hates all the new approaches he can see around him to the investigation of nature. This is John Aubrey. He's rather sweet, this. He's going to go to Italy. You know where he's going to go. And he asks Harvey's advice. What should he do? And Harvey tells him what company to keep, what books to read, how to manage my studies. In short, he bid me go to the fountainhead, to Aristotle. And then, as you see, Harvey's language becomes rather presidential. I don't mean the president of this college, I mean the president of the USA. And what he means by that is, these are little kids. They're wetting their nappies. They don't know what they're doing. They don't know what they're talking about. So he hates that, and he also hates chemists who are all over the place towards the end of Harvey's life. And above all, he hates Descartes, the French philosopher, and who can blame him? Because Descartes is coming up, you know, I think, therefore I am, and everything will come back from that. Now, Descartes is an atomist. He wants to give an explanation of the whole of the world by the movement of atoms together. And he reads Harvey's book, and he thinks, this is exactly what I need to explain that there's a fundamental explanation of what's going on in the human body. And Descartes is not a bad anatomist. But what he wants from this is for the blood to be dropping drop by drop into extremely hot ventricles of the heart, which makes it evaporate and push out into the arteries. As Harvey said, what a lot of nonsense. And now, finally, regrets. As you can see, he had a few. Even in writing on the book on the circulation, he says, these things are so new and unheard of that I fear harm to myself from people's ill will. He was not looking for enemies, as some people do. And he was right. Lots of books written against him. Also, his practice fell off. His patients thought he was nuts and decided they would want to go with a more conventional, straightforward doctor. And all the physicians were against his opinion. And he took some precautions when he started. First of all, he delayed publication of this discovery for 9 or more years. It's a long time. You've got this thing burning, as it were, on your desk, and there's going to be a terrible outrage. And before he dared publish, he constantly brought this to the attention of the president and fellows of the college. And I don't know what to say. Did he wear them down? He got their approval. And the final bit of precaution he did was to dedicate his book to the King, Charles I. And it says, the heart in the body is like the king in the kingdom, the source of everything, all life. That didn't help him very much either. Finally, we come full circle, if you notice that. The president of the college and Harvey's most loving colleagues do support and defend him. And as he says, I first propounded it to you and confirmed it with ocular testimony, answered your doubts and objections, and gotten the president's verdict in my favour. So you can see from all this that the college played a vital role in Harvey gaining the confidence, testing out his theory, to give him the courage to publish. The college didn't do any of the work. Harvey did the work, but the college was the support, as it were, the guarantee. And finally, before he died, his doctrines were accepted through the world. So I give you William Harvey, grand old man, greatest fellow of the Royal College of Physicians. Thank you. Oh, ask questions. Sure. Oh, sure.
We have a couple of microphones. Does anyone have a question for Dr. Cunningham? Should we start here?
Yes, thank you for a wonderful lecture. I just wondered why bloodletting persisted for so many years.
Yeah, we all wonder about that.
Do you have any answers?
Well, the thing about bloodletting is it works. If you believe the veins are just one system, it works. And if you believe the circulation, you can appreciate it doesn't matter where the blood comes from or really where you bleed, but it still works. Patients demand to have their blood let, right into the middle of the 19th century. And as historians, we despair about the behaviour of patients like this. But if you go and give blood today, as I'm sure many of you do, they don't take as much as an old-fashioned physician would take, but when they've taken what they want, they sit you up and give you a cup of tea because you feel lightheaded. You feel something has happened. Oh, that feels a lot better. And if you were ill with a fever and the physician had you bled, you would feel better. And he would even bleed you till you fainted. And you would insist, "Oh, more, bleed me more." Now, the theory of bloodletting is a very mysterious one, but everyone did it. It's the first thing patients wanted, especially if they had a fever, which is the standard thing they had. Please, here. Have you got a microphone, anyone?
Just kind of thank you very much for the lecture. I just kind of whizzed around the exhibition, and there was a mention of, I think, of an Italian Carambalo or something like that. I've said it wrong.
Colombo.
Thank you. Who had some interesting ideas, and I was all the way through your. So I was interested in how important that really was, and I was also interested in asking you. So you were talking lots about Europe, and of course, it's the Renaissance was not only the Greeks and the Romans, but also the Arab.
Actually, can I disagree with you already? It wasn't. It's the Arabs they were against. In resuscitating Greek, Roman learning, and especially medicine, it was the Arabs that were being dismissed.
But it was Arabs who had the optic theories. It was their optic theories, I think.
Oh, yeah, but that's hundreds of years before.
Yeah, exactly. So did they have any ideas about circulation?
Well, you're going to say Ibn Nafis, are you?
No, I was just going to
No,
ask
okay.
you.
So, there have been many attempts to try and find moments that built up to the circulation. Now, how many hundred years of that do you need when no one's looking for the circulation? Now, Ibn Nafis is thought to have thought of it, but he thinks of it in a theological, he doesn't even think of the circulation, in a theological context. Colombo, who is an anatomist in Padua, just between Vesalius and Fabricius, he discovers what they call the lesser circulation. Let's say the blood in the human goes from the right side of the heart to the lungs and the lungs to the left side of the heart. That's not a circulation. It's a discovery, and Harvey knows it. But it's not as if Harvey's saying, well, how can I join the dots and finish that?
Thank you.
Thanks. You talk about Harvey sitting on his discovery for fear of sharing it for 10 years or 9 or 11, depending on your maths.
9 or more, yes.
Do we have any idea of what he thought about it during that period? I mean, did he just cast it out of his mind, or did he start to think about what the consequences of this new understanding might be for other parts of medicine?
I'll answer the last part first. As a physician, Harvey's a Galenist. It's the only kind of medicine you can, or you could do Paracelsian, but as a university physician, that's the kind of physician he was. And when he treated his patients, it would be according to Galenic recipes and remedies. But he does know, as you can see from some of those quotations, that publishing this is going to be explosive. In fact, it's one of the images he uses. When I worked out how much blood was passing, how fast, I thought the arteries would be absolutely full of blood and the veins absolutely empty, and the body would explode. So yes, he does know, he does worry, but he's an obsessive anatomist. He won't say, oh, yeah, that led me the wrong way, I'll give up this. He just keeps going on and keeps coming back to the college for their opinion, to answer their queries. Does that answer you?
Yeah, thanks.
Okay.
Is there a bit when the college relents? Is there someone in the college who takes it on? You see what I mean?
Relents isn't quite the right word. They're all being very collegiate. He calls them together. They come and attend the annual anatomy he holds on their behalf, and he keeps showing them what his current work is indicating. Now, they don't relent. I think they are just worn down, to be frank. most of them. Being a fellow of the college is a very high status thing. He's the only one working on anatomy in the whole country. And he goes on and on. He's been to Padua. He knows. And it's, to be frank, he's not the only member of the college who has been to Padua. All the best and the brightest boys go to Padua. So some of them will be familiar with the kind of Fabrician teaching that he has had.
In response to the questioner behind me, you said that really nothing changed as a result of the discovery, but when did it change, medical practice?
Well, bleeding, mid-19th century, when they actually do proper trials of whether it makes any difference. And that's in France, which has then become the centre of investigation. You can still be bled today if you particularly wish, and leeches can be used for certain purposes. But in general, no one has been bled in Europe by a learned, educated physician, because other cultures bleed for prophylactic and curative purposes. I would say not since the beginning of the 20th century.
Sorry, I wasn't talking specifically about bloodletting.
Yeah.
I was talking about an understanding of how the blood circulates. How that knowledge changed medical practice.
And again, I say that is a problem that has bothered us historians. We couldn't find, despite the explosive nature of the discovery, how practice changed. The chemists make a bigger splash after this period with different kinds of theories about what's going on. But medical practice, your physician, he comes round and he has his lancet. We've got lancets at the back there. He'll take blood. He will give you a potion of some kind. But those are the two biggest interventions he can make. And he's always there in an emergency. There's no trials he can do with patients say, well, that worked on this time, this one, I'll change my practice next time. It really depends how you've been educated.